I've just listened to the opening of Maleficent. So I'm always curious to what opening bit you have, but that's a good one.
Oh yeah, I always just use these. Like, oh, maybe next time I'll make it meta. So I'll use this as the bit for the episode that we're about to do. So then you'll listen to it and you'll be like, I listened to Maleficent, and then it'll be me explaining the bit as the bit of the next bit for the opening bit.
Right. And then we're going to get accused of having run out of things to talk about.
Oh no, we have tons of things to talk about. If my 20-minute video on High School Musical doesn't prove that I have enough things to talk about, I don't know what does. 20 minutes!
That's true, and you could have kept on going, and I would have kept on listening.
Welcome. You are entering into a strange dimension. A dimension where narratives from across space and time come together. Narratives that could have, might have, or should have been all exist here in one space. This is CineCasters Ultimate Timeline.
Welcome back to CineCasters Ultimate Timeline. This is the show where we watch movies and then pitch them back to each other. I'm joined by Nate Draper.
Hi, that's me.
And of course, I'm Andrew DeYoung / Janglez, and today we are doing Warm Bodies.
Warm Bodies, the classic movie from, what year was it?
2013.
2013.
Really?
So. I somehow, in my memory, I thought it was a more recent movie than that.
I guess 2013 is not that recent, but...
I guess so. I mean, because I placed that, I would have just graduated from film school the year before that. So, to me, that, in my mind, that just seems like a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's the year before I finished my undergrad. So, yeah, okay, all right, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, so much has changed in that time. 2020 aside, just like, you know.
Oh yeah, the catastrophe that is 2020. Put that aside, and yeah, there still is a lot. But this movie was weird for me. It kind of eluded my radar. I knew of it and / about it, but I think because it came right at the end of the Twilight kind of thing, and this movie is clearly a young adult kind of movie. I didn't. I just chalked it up to being like a Twilight clone kind of thing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
The Twilight Saga finished in like 2012, 2011, with its like two-parter.
That sounds correct.
So then this movie came out in like 2013, 2012, and I was like, oh, it's just these zombies instead of vampires, and it kind of is. But then I watched this movie and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty clever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Your thoughts?
Well, it's Jonathan Levin? I don't actually know how to it's Levine, I think. But he directed 50/50, which came out the year before, I believe. And that was, 2 years before. I thought that was a spectacular film. That's the one with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Seth Rogen, where Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets cancer and goes through cancer treatment. Yeah. And it's a comedy, but it's also very heartfelt. And it's an excellent movie. And he recently did another movie last year that I loved, which was Long Shot, which was Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron. Is it Theron or Theron? Charlize Theron. I think
I've
that's
always
how
said
it's pronounced.
Charlize Theron.
Yeah, I've always said that too. And then I heard recently in an interview someone call her Charlize Theron. So now I'm just confused. But we are talking about the same person. Anyway, yeah. It's Seth Rogen and it's Charlize Theron. Theron? I can't get it right.
Therein lies the answer.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Anyway, that movie. Yeah. Great film. Check it out.
Okay.
But yeah, Jonathan Levine, he's got this, he does these very good, they're comedies, but they've also got but no pun intended, a warm, like human drama component to it as well.
Yeah. I don't know if this was based off a book, but it feels like it could have been a YA novel.
It is actually based off a book.
Yeah, I feel like it has to be. But I have to say that this movie kind of threw me. I was expecting not a good movie, and what I got was a very entertaining, decent movie that was fun.
Yeah. I thought it was okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I enjoyed it.
At the end, but like, now, having watched this movie when I was going, I don't like horror movies, so I'm always hesitant, but I knew it wasn't going to be a total horror movie. But from the get-go, there's that immediate sort of monologue from R when he's just like, I should stand up straight, or I should stop doing this. And I was like, oh, I love this tone. Like, this is so comedic, self-deprecating, but also everyone's dead. And I was just like,
exactly.
Immediately I like this tone. I really enjoyed it. And it carried me through the whole movie until the very end. And I was like, okay, I will recommend this movie fairly highly, actually.
Yeah.
For what
it's
it is.
a great opening.
Yeah.
It is a great opening for the same reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also have a few issues with it.
Okay.
So why don't you start? Goods and bads.
I think that. I thought the humor worked. Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't really have any strong feelings one way or another about this movie. I know I definitely enjoyed it. There were aspects to it that I really appreciated. The things that I think worked were specifically the humor. I liked that self-deprecating humor, and I also liked that parallel between zombies and being disconnected and that need for human connection. I thought that was interesting. There's another movie that tried to play off of, it took the zombie genre and took it in a similar direction, and that came out last year, and that was a movie by Jim Jarmusch called The Dead Don't Die, which I think is actually a great movie. It got panned by pretty much everybody, but I think it's much better than people give it credit for. You just have to really embrace the absolute absurdity of it. But basically in that one, the zombies these people come back to life inexplicably, but they're drawn to the things that they were addicted to in real life. So it's basically it's a little, I'll admit it is a little on the nose, because you're like, oh, okay, it's about consumerist culture and how we're all addicted to these things.
But zombies have always been about consumerist culture. When Romero first came out with it's interesting that you say this, and I'm going to make the comparison, but when Romero came out with Night of the Living Dead, or the first one, that is Night of the Living Dead, and zombies sort of became part of popular culture, they were immediately sort of drawn to Reagan era consumerists. You know what I mean? Like rampant.
Okay.
And then the other thing is vampire movies became quite popular around that same time, and a lot of people talk about how you can sort of compare those two movies, whereas zombie movies are like how the conservative class views the more liberal class as these like mindless consumerist, the rabble, the plebeians, who just consume. And whereas vampire movies are often the more liberal class viewing the, elitist class, the way they feed on the blood of actual working people, so you get these kind of metaphors between wealthy elitists feeding on your everyman versus how rich people, or not necessarily rich people, but how conservative class might view zombies as unthinking, mindless consumers who just, don't think, they just consume and use and do. And so there's always been that kind of comparison in horror literature, particularly in zombies and vampires. What I think that this movie gets really, really right, that's different from other movies, or that is traditional in vampire movies, especially recent vampire movies, is using vampirism, or in this case zombieism, as a metaphor for puberty.
Oh, okay.
In particular, you hit on it a little bit. In particular, the way that he, but all the zombies crave human connection, and try to connect with people, but they constantly feel like they're locked in their own head. And teenagers are often called mindless zombies or whatever. So I think it's a poignant criticism or poignant reading to take, to be like, oh, you can use zombieism as a means of as an allegory for puberty. Usually it's vampirism or werewolfism that gets used, and that's because there's often ideas of lust involved, because all of a sudden you have this hunger that you can't control. Often it's overtly sexual, particularly in Dracula, it's often overtly sexual. But with zombies, you can lose a little bit of that, although there is the hunger. I felt like this movie lost a little bit of that overtness and tried to play up the whole idea of the cure is literally human connection.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And if you become a zombie, you get stuck in your head. In your head. There we go.
But I think we can take it a step further.
Sorry.
I think we get... Thanks, Cranberries. I think we can take it a step further, because the zombies, when they give up, become bonies.
Mm-hmm.
They become the skeletons.
Oh, right.
And so I think that's a metaphor for the kind of depression that you experience as a teenager. That kind of, all of a sudden, when you give up, you're not just a zombie anymore. You have literally given into your own apathy. You're no longer in control. I don't know. That's why I thought this movie was so smart, because I was watching it and I was like, as soon as they mentioned the bonies and it's funny, he's like, oh God, don't pick at it, you're just making it worse. But I was like, oh, like this is literally a metaphor for apathy.
Yeah. I think that's intentional too. I got that from it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I really liked, that I think really works, So I actually thought the longer the movie went on, the more it lost its comedic tone.
Yeah, I agree.
The movie, that's a gripe that I have. The movie is really funny in the beginning, and the more human R becomes, the less funny the movie is, because it's his internal dialogue, the way that he views the world but can't experience it, that makes it funny. And the more human he becomes, and you see that human come from both his like makeup, but also his speech patterns become more prominent. And the movie becomes more YA and less comedy. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I was really enjoying the comedy. But what did save it for me is when I realized that this entire movie is actually just Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
No, you don't understand.
Definitely,
You don't understand. Let me walk you through this, okay? I'm not just reading into it. Because what
I do see it, but go ahead. Yeah.
What tipped it off to me was there's a scene where Julie is standing on a balcony.
The balcony scene? Yeah,
and
I did have that feeling. Yeah.
But here we go. It gets better. Her name is Julie, as in Juliet.
Oh, yeah, okay.
His name is R, as in Romeo.
Yeah.
When she's in the balcony scene, her best friend is named Nora, as in the nurse. And in the balcony scene, Nora 2 times goes, "Who are you talking to out there?" Which is something the nurse does in the balcony scene.
Wow, okay.
Julie's boyfriend is named Perry, which could be a short form or a reinvention of the name Paris, who is the man that Julie's father, or Juliet's father, wants her to marry. The fact that Juliet's father is the one who is trying to get rid of all the zombies, i.e. Lord Capulet trying to get rid of all the Montagues, right?
Right.
R's best friend is named M, which we find out later in the movie is Marcus, but in Romeo and Juliet, his name is Mercutio.
Right. Oh my God. I didn't realize that it was actually that close. Holy shit.
This movie is just Romeo and Juliet.
But Romeo also kills, what's his name?
Paris.
Yeah. Doesn't Romeo kill Paris in...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And which he does in Warm Bodies as well. Yeah.
No, I don't think he does kill Paris. I think
Paris kills
in order
Mercutio,
to simplify things...
And then Romeo wants to... Doesn't
they have Romeo... No, Romeo kills a character named Tybalt.
Oh, right.
So, but I think for the purposes of this story, they just combine those 2 characters.
Yeah.
But like, this is literally just Romeo and Juliet and zombies.
Oh wow. Yeah. Oh wow. You're absolutely right. Holy shit.
I know. And it was the balcony scene that tipped me off. And then when I realized, I was like, because at the end, they're like, "Oh, what's your name?" And he's like, "Oh, my name is just R." And I was like, that's an odd choice that he would just continue to be R. And then I was like, oh, because he's Romeo. He's literally Romeo.
Interesting.
Did I just blow your mind?
You did, actually. You did just blow my mind. Because that is clearly, there's too much crossover for that to all be accidental.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, I could just be absolutely nuts, like doing a Pepe Sylvie from like, I want to talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail? I'm dying to talk about the mail. But I don't think I'm doing a Pepe Sylvie. I think it is literally Romeo and Juliet.
I think you are right, actually. Holy shit. Yeah, my wow, actually.
Yeah.
Because I had that sense when I was watching that scene as well. I went, oh, that's funny. They're making a homage to Romeo and Juliet. Oh, that's cute. And then didn't go beyond that. And then when you brought it up, I went, oh yeah, I had the same feeling, but did not see how much crossover there was. That's actually amazing. Wow.
Yeah. The last thing that I will say that I really I didn't like the fact that the cure was human connection. I get that it works for the metaphor that we were talking about, but I actually think it's too convenient. But I will say, like, I really wish they would have just named, instead of naming him Romeo, instead of keeping him R at the end, that he said that his name was Romero, as a play on both Romeo, but also like George Romero.
Yeah.
I think that would have been more clever. And the last thing I will say is
I would have given it away though.
Yeah, but it would have been hilarious if he was like, "Oh, my name's Romero."
Right. Yeah.
Like as an homage to both zombies and Romeo and Juliette. But the last thing I will say is because I wrote this down, I was like, all the zombies this entire time they've been thinking that they want brains when actually they just wanted hearts.
Aw.
Yeah. And yeah, so you get into your stuff. That's all the stuff I want to talk about.
Okay, yeah. Well, I was, so I forgot. Yeah, there's Tybalt, and then is it Romeo? Romeo kills Tybalt because he killed Mercutio because Mercutio killed Paris, I think.
No, Paris doesn't die, I don't think.
Paris doesn't die?
He might die at the very end, but he goes into like the tomb or whatever. It's been a long time since I've seen or read it, but as far as I remember, Romeo might kill Paris at the very end, but what happens is there's an argument. The king basically shows up and is like, "Hey, neither of you can fight anymore in public places." So then Mercutio and Romeo wind up getting into Romeo's off with Juliette, and Mercutio gets into it with Tybalt. Or actually, I think Tybalt gets into it with another character. It might be... I can't remember, but Mercutio gets in the way and he gets stabbed.
Yeah, and there's different adaptations that portray it differently as well. And one of them it's intentional, and then like another interpretation is that it's accidental. Yeah,
so Mercutio gets stabbed, and he has the best line in the whole play. Mercutio is the best character, by the way. He has the best line in the whole play where he says, "A curse on both your houses."
Right.
And then so then in revenge...
Because Mercutio's not from either house, is he? He's just a friend of Rome.
He is technically the kinsman of the prince, actually.
Oh,
but, okay. He is affiliated with the Montagues more than the Capulets, and maybe even more than the prince. And so what winds up happening is he gets killed, and then Romeo wants to take vengeance for Mercutio's death and winds up killing Tybalt. And then the Capulets basically say they want vengeance, and the prince is like, no vengeance. Instead, henceforth, Romeo is banished from Verona. And then Romeo has a hissy fit.
Right.
Being like, rats,
I did just double check here.
May gaze upon Juliette, but Romeo may not.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, at the end, Paris, there's a duel, and Romeo kills Paris.
Yes, yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
There's another crossover. Yeah.
Yeah. So, pretty
anyway,
cool.
Okay, yeah, so back to Warm Bodies. Things that I felt didn't work. I felt that the ending was too easy. And what I mean by that is it just seemed to wrap itself up a little too nicely for my liking. And the thing is, I feel like I never had a feeling that it wasn't going to work out. Okay, I'll compare it to another great zombie movie I just watched.
Train to Busan.
Yes!
Amazing
I just watched it the other day.
Amazing movie.
I love it. Oh, it's such a good film. Yeah.
I knew you were going to say that too, because Train to Busan is considered the best zombie movie of all time.
Really?
Yep.
Interesting. It's definitely up there for me. I think for me, the number one zombie movie is still Shaun of the Dead.
But it's a comedy.
Yeah, but it's still a zombie movie technically.
Because I know a lot of people would say 28 Days Later.
And that would be another one for me too. That's also right up there.
That's up there, mostly for the soundtrack for me, because Godspeed You Black Emperor. But
I didn't know that was them who did the music for it. Yeah, okay,
most of the music is Godspeed You Black Emperor.
Oh, that makes sense.
But but Train to Busan, cool. Carry on.
But with Train, sorry. Oh, okay. I lost you for a second there. We're back.
Okay.
Train to Busan. Yeah. So one of the things I loved about it was, you never. It's like it resolves itself, but then something else happens, and it keeps you on edge because you're always going. you're always going, oh, they might not make it. And you have that feeling that it might not work out for them all the way through. Whereas in this, I didn't get that feeling. And now I realize this is a lighter movie in tone. Train to Busan is like we have to survive the zombie apocalypse. And it's a much more intense movie for that reason. Whereas it's kind of a romantic comedy. I mean, I was looking at it kind of like, the boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy has to win girl back. Kind of, it follows that pattern, but it's playing with it because one of them's a zombie.
It's just, I mean, that's what I thought as well. I was just like, oh, this is, as soon as I found out it was Romeo and Juliet, I was like, oh, it's just Romeo and Juliet, except one of them's a zombie.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like, this is the same thing which is why I unjustly probably sort of categorized it in with Twilight, because I was like,
okay,
it's just boy meets girl, and they like fall in love, except one of them is insert blank. Right?
I think it's clever.
You can pretty much do
Twilight.
that you can do that with anything.
Yeah, exactly.
This movie's much better made, better acted, and better written than the Twilight series.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is a way better film in terms of its craft.
In terms of its craft.
Going back to a plug for High School Musical is a thing. Also, you can watch on the CineMasters channel on YouTube. Anyway, so the other things that I felt didn't work for this were. So ending felt too easy, and I felt like, okay, no pun intended, she warmed up to him way too fast.
Yeah, I agree.
I felt that was just, I doubted that a little bit, and I felt that the zombies' transformation to being good was also a little bit, like, abrupt. And I get, like, it worked. It did work, but something about it to me
didn't... It was too fast.
Wait. Yeah, exactly.
Not that it was unjustified, but yeah, it was a bit... almost like an epiphany as opposed to a transition.
Yeah, and I just was skeptical that this one specific event could trigger this whole massive thing happening.
As if that wouldn't have happened before. How many years has it been? Like 5, 8, 10?
Exactly. That was my feeling. Yeah. So those are the only notes I really had for things that I felt were working against the movie.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it.
Yeah. We should talk about all the actors in this movie, because there's some big names too.
Yeah, Rob Cordy. How is it pronounced? Yeah, Cordy. Yeah.
He's a famous comedian, but also John Malkovich.
John Malkovich, that's right. Dave Franco.
Like, just some of these like big names where you're like, oh shit, like this movie has some real talent and some real it's a good movie.
It is a good movie. I do think it's a good movie. Oh, and Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah.
Is it Holt or Hoult?
Oh,
I'm going to say Holt.
Yeah.
He was also in Mad Max: Fury Road. He played the guy who, like, excuse me. Oh, that was a
sprayed his
burp.
Hux.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Nux.
Yeah. He sprays the thing in his mouth.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Also,
a great movie. If you haven't checked it out, Mad Max: Fury Road.
Yeah.
I mean,
I do think
it,
they played John Corduroy. How do you pronounce his name? Cordy.
I think it's Cordy. Yeah.
I think they cast him really, really well, because there's a couple lines in there where he says, like, "Will you help?" and then he's like, "Fuck yeah!" And it's just like, oh
yeah.
If you've ever seen anything else that actor has been in, that's very him.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. He's definitely got a sort of a character associated with him, which he does very well.
Yeah. Why don't you get into your pitch?
All right. And that's it for my goods and bads, or things.
Cool. Why don't you get into your pitch then?
All right. So I went through the old playbook of CineMasters tips and tricks for how to rewrite a movie, and I basically
knew you were going to do this. I knew you were going to do that. I thought about it myself, and I was like, because I was struggling with this one, and then I was like, what am I going to do with this? Well, maybe I should go back to the old CineMasters switcheroo.
Yeah. Well, I did the switcheroo.
Well, let's hear it.
Would it be interesting? Okay, so basically, and part of my reason for doing it, another thing was I felt like like I said, she warmed up to him way too fast, and him bringing her home and then her choosing to stay. Yeah, I thought that was, for me, a big crux of the story.
Yeah.
So for me, switching it, I found it helped me address that a little bit more. So anyway, so R is a zombie. In my version, it's a female zombie, but it's her thoughts. Like, and she's like a young adult, maybe. Yeah, I'm assuming. I'm gonna say she's like 19 to like 21 maybe.
Yeah.
And she's saying kind of the same things like, oh, I should stand up straight. I should,
That's a great
and
intro. Great intro.
It's a fantastic intro. So the only thing I would change with it is just have a different, it be a female zombie instead of a male zombie.
Yeah.
In this story specifically. But the one thing I would introduce is there are vague memories of something from before, but she can't quite put together what those are. But there are occasional flashes of like, I remember this happening. Anyway, in this version, it's essentially the same thing with the people who leave I'm calling it the safe place in mine. But the love interest in this is a guy named Jack, and she eats Jack's girlfriend. But Jack sees it this time. Jack sees that R basically eats his girlfriend, and he escapes and he goes back to the safe place, and he's upset. And what he explains when he's back at the base is like he felt like it was his fault because when they were on the mission, he couldn't shoot a zombie. He's actually never been able to kill one because in his mind, they're still people.
Yeah.
And he has a hard time with the idea that he actually is like, maybe they are more human. And so now he feels responsible for his girlfriend's death because he couldn't save her. So he thinks about it that night and he's like, and he just gets so angry with himself that he basically takes a gun and he escapes and he's going to go and kill this zombie. And he's going to take revenge on this zombie. Also to like prove to himself that he can do it and he won't let it happen again. Anyway, so he tracks down R and he finds her and he corners her and he's got like a gun pointed to her head or something like that. And he sees that R is genuinely frightened. She's genuinely terrified and he can't kill her. And what he sees is then she basically like, she's nice to him. Like she doesn't try to eat him. And when there's a horde of zombies that approach, she basically takes him to her airplane house, essentially. Yeah. So he's not, it's not just a like, okay, I couldn't kill this person. I see there was like some fear in this thing and now it just helped me to survive. So he's still a little on edge, but he's also kind of confused about what's going on. Anyway, and we're also getting the story from R's perspective of like, she's obviously attracted to this guy, but she's awkward and she doesn't know how to be around him. Like, so like with some of the scenes I liked in the original, like there was one scene that I actually really connected with. It's later, but when he's back at the safe house and he's going, say something human. And he's like, how are you doing? Nailed it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've definitely had that inner monologue before where I'm like, say something human. How's it going? Nailed it. Come on. Anyway, so he's basically he's staying with her in the airplane, and anytime he looks outside, he sees there's like a swarm of zombies around. So he's like, okay, well, I guess I got to stay here. Like I can't just leave. Anyway, so then there's one day where they actually do leave together, and they steal this BMW and they drive around on the tarmac. Anyway, you see there's this progression to they're getting close together, and it's all told from R's perspective. Anyway, one night R thinks she's getting close to Jack, and she's like, basically this is the night she's going to tell him that she loves him, in her own zombie way. But she's like, I'm going to tell him that this is how I feel. But when she wakes up, she sees that he's actually gone. He's not there anymore. And when she looks around, the zombies have actually dispersed, and he's taken the BMW and he's actually raced away. And so she's actually feeling very betrayed, and she's feeling like, oh, I just like opened up to this person. I was just about to open up this person, and then they ran away, and I shouldn't have done that, and I should never, and I knew better than to open up like that, and it's just and she starts thinking about like, I feel like I've been hurt like this before, but she can't place where it is, but I feel like this is something that I've experienced before. Anyway, so Jack gets back to the base, And when he gets back, he sees that actually they've got one of the zombies, and they've actually got one of the zombies and taken it into the base, and they've captured it, and they're actually going to do experiments on it to see if they're trying to find a cure. And what we realize is that was actually his mission. He was actually sent to go and capture a zombie to take back to the base, because this is how they're trying to find a cure. But what he also sees is he sees that the soldiers that have the zombie beat it up, because they're like, each of them have lost someone to these things, and so they take out their frustrations on this. So, and it's all from his perspective seeing this. Anyway, because he just showed up, and he'd been gone for so long, the guy who runs the base, the John Malkovich character, invites him to ask him about what he saw. And basically Jack says like, oh, this is what I saw. I was out in the world, and I think I saw, he tells the whole story, actually. And when John Malkovich presses further, John Malkovich actually talks about, like, he actually had a daughter once that the reason he wants to find a cure, why it's so important for him, is because he thinks his daughter is still out there and is actually being turned into one of these. And it turns out that R is actually John Malkovich's daughter.
I was going to say, immediately, I was going to be like, that's where this is going.
Yeah, exactly. And her name is Rose. So Jack goes like, okay, I found your daughter.
Did you purposely do Jack and Rose for Titanic?
Actually, no, I didn't. But that's hilarious. That's so funny. I mean, sure, why not? We'll go with that.
Go on.
Oh, wow. Well, this is going to change everything when we get to the scene with the car and the storage lock. Anyway.
Spoilers. We're not there yet.
Anyway, Jack takes John Malkovich to where Rose was, but Rose doesn't recognize the John Malkovich character. But what happens is they basically capture Rose, and from Rose's perspective, she feels like she's being betrayed, like she's being captured by, like, she opened up to this guy Jack, and then now she's being taken into captivity. Anyway, Jack is now observing, like, in one scene he's in this like test facility where they've got all these zombies, and Jack is seeing all the tests that they're doing on zombies, and they're doing things like cutting them open while they're alive, and he's like, he's seeing this and going, I'm not sure that this is actually ethical practice. Although they have a vaccine that they're testing, but every zombie they test it on ends up dying. So they're keeping Rose in a specific cell, and the idea is that when they find a vaccine that works, then they'll give it to her. Anyway, but because she's still a zombie, no one's allowed to visit her. And Jack is able to go and see her, but they're separated by bars. And Rose she's unable to articulate the fact that she feels betrayed. And Jack is trying to calm her down, but it's through this cell doors. And so because of that, she's just getting worked up and anxious. So in her situation, her own, she's getting worse and worse. So Jack goes to the John Malkovich character and he says, let Rose go. Like, I can guarantee, like, I was with her before and she never hurt me, and I stayed with her, and I don't think she'll hurt anybody. But the John Malkovich character's like, I can't let her go, because if she hurts someone, then they'll shoot her. Like, I'm doing this to protect her, actually. You have to realize that. Anyway, throughout all of this, and the John Malkovich character goes back to visit Rose from time to time, and we see actually those memories that Rose had were actually of her father, and she starts putting together like, oh, this man actually was my father, but because he was so, in her memory, he was so controlling of her. And it was that controlling of her that actually pushed her away and created that distance. And she felt like she was never able to actually open up to her father because he was so controlling. Anyway, one day Jack sees that in this testing facility, they bring in another zombie, and it's one of the zombies that he recognizes from his time with Rose, and it's actually one of her friends. And they're doing the same tests on these zombies, and he's like, okay, I can't allow this. And so he starts creating a scene. So they lock him up, and they put him actually into solitary confinement. They're like, you've got to calm down. Or they put him into a cell somewhere where he's isolated. Anyway, while he's there, there's a wave, a zombie attack basically, and the base is completely overrun. But because Jack is kept in this cell, the zombies can't get to him. So he's basically stuck in this cell, and quite a lot of time passes, and he's just stuck in the cell with these zombies running and roaming the hallway. Anyway, eventually one day he's finally rescued, and there's this team that shows up that they're saying like, we're among some of the survivors. They've gone to another safe place, but we've come to see if we can salvage anything that was here. And Jack says like, oh, there's someone else here who I want to rescue, and they go to Rose's cell, but Rose isn't there. And what they tell him is that, oh, she's actually being taken. She's actually being taken to their new facility, like to the new safe place. And when Jack gets there, he sees that Rose is basically kept behind a cage out in the open in the middle of this big open area, and it's raining, and her father is standing on the other side of this cage trying to talk to her, but she's completely reverted to the way she was before. Anyway, as time passes, Jack basically tries to convince the John Malkovich character, like, look, let me go in the cage with her. I'll prove to you that there's actually a way to save them. So they let him go into the cage with her. Ooh, and what they find is that Rose actually, like at first, you play it like she's, it seems like she's going to attack him, but when she recognizes that it's him, she starts to calm down. And so then there's this passage of time where she starts kind of going back to the way she was when she first met Jack, and eventually they let her roam freely. And then there's also the John Malkovich character starts interacting with her. And basically what happens from this is other people, basically they learn that, oh, we can actually take the people who are undead and actually help them, but they never get fully better. And so the end of the movie is basically, it's a montage of people who've gone back, and the rest of the world, they're trying to return back to normal, but the people who were undead, they basically look after them, and they have to take care of them. But no one actually is able to go back entirely to the way they were before, but they can still, they can live in a way that's not, to some extent. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, and the film ends with Rose and Jack. You get the sense that they've gone really close, and it ends with, I had this idea for a final scene where Rose actually gives Jack a kiss, and he slowly turns slightly undead.
Whoa, that'd be interesting.
And then the movie ends.
Yeah. You ever seen the movie Fido?
No.
It's a zombie movie where people keep zombies as pets.
Oh, interesting.
That's kind of where I thought you were going to go with this at the very end there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So, I've never seen this.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks amazing.
Yeah.
How have I not seen this? This looks great.
One of the things that I thought was interesting that you did was having some time where Jack is in solitary confinement. And have some time pass where it's just him in solitary confinement, because then you could actually like play off of like the isolation is the same kind of way that Rose feels trapped inside her own body.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was like, oh, that's really clever, because like she's having these inner monologues to give away to the audience how she feels, to show that there's some humanity left, but she's isolated. She can't seem to connect, as we talked about the theme in the original movie. And then you do that with Jack, but you do it with him in the solitary confinement, and then you essentially can have him be like, oh, is this what it feels like?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, being unable to communicate. That's really cool. I really like that. I really like that. It's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
I like that you keep them undead.
Yeah, that was I felt like that was the way to go. Otherwise, it's like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel it's too easy otherwise. I don't know.
I hear that.
Yeah. Anyway.
I wrote a lot for my pitch, so I'm going to get into it right away.
Go for it.
And I'll try to... So in my version, we get the same introduction of R. It's hilarious. And I really want to keep it. So then we were introduced to to Julie, whose father is in charge of one of the last surviving human colonies. We're then introduced to the group. So she's actually much more they're much more militaristic than what we got in the original show or original movie. So like they have a bit more training and a bit more like survivalist skills. So she's not just like your average, I don't know, high school student or high school like young adult protagonist. She has much more like survivalist training and a bit more like military training in order to survive. And we get introduced to her father. So then we're introduced, basically they're being sent on a mission to go and find some medicine. So leading the group is a dude named Tyrone, followed by Julie, and then Julie's boyfriend Perry. And the two of them don't seem to be on the greatest of terms right now, Julie and Perry. So they're supposed to be escorting two medical professionals. One is one is Julie and Perry's other friend Nora, and the other is just one of Nora's colleagues. So both of them are nurses, and they're escorting them to go find medicine. Julie wonders if the reason that they're on an escort mission rather than just to retrieve medicine is that she wonders if maybe that these nurses she's talking to Perry. Maybe these nurses and Nora is can't tell them, but is working on something to find the cure. But Perry is like, there is no cure, or somebody would have found it by now. It's been too long. Like, so then the two of them argue before, like showing that they're on the outs before Tyrone comes in and is like, yo, shut up. We need to get to work. So then we cut back to R. R is really, really struggling. He seems to be hungry all the time, like for human brains. But that isn't really the thing that keeps him going. The thing that keeps him going is the fact that he can feel his own humanity, and it's stuck inside his body, but it can't get out. And that's what really keeps him going. Every day he seems to lose a bit more of himself, and he worries what will happen if he loses all of himself. He thinks, if I give up on this, or if I lose all of who I am, I'll become a bony, just like the other ones who give up. So the reason that he collects things in the plane is because he tries to use them as a means of reminding himself of the things that he does remember, these little tidbits of information he remembers from his past life. So every day, he looks over his collection and is like, oh, this music or this thing or this object or this game all remind me of who I once was, even though I can't quite remember who that person was. But he does say, like, every so often he does have to eat. He's overwhelmed by this hunger he has to consume in order to continue to operate. So then we go back to Julie, who, because she's in this small group, has managed to, there's only 5 of them, they managed not to draw too much attention to themselves, and they get to the facility that they've been scoping out. And here they split up into groups to find, one of them is retrieving medicine, the other one is looking over, like, pharmaceuticals and different things like that. So Julie and Tyrone begin packing the basic medicine, while Perry and the 2 nurses begin searching for lab equipment and compounds and anything that might be of assistance. So all seems quiet while they're packing the stuff away, until Julie and Tyrone hear a scream from the other room. They run over to see Nora as she's trying to resuscitate a now, like, the other nurse is bleeding on the floor, and Nora's trying to resuscitate her. Perry is at the window with his gun ready. Zombies then start to show up, and they're entering and ravaging the place, and R sees Julie, and he has the same kind of reaction that we see in the movie. He's like, oh, that's weird. What's up with that? Like, that pretty girl. I didn't used to notice those before. So then Perry tries to stop R getting close to Julie, as R is like, what? But once he gets in the way, R rips into him and begins eating his brains and saving some for later. So we also see Nora survive, and we see a bleeding Tyrone on the floor. So R approaches Nora, and now having eaten some of Perry's brain, he is like, oh, I know who this is. This is this guy's girlfriend. Her name is Julie. And he convinces her somehow, even though he can't talk, convinces her somehow to come with him. And for some reason, she like sees him and is like, what? Like, what's going on? And she decides to follow for some reason. And she puts some like corpse's guts of her boyfriend on her so that the other corpses can't smell her. So R, in his inner monologue, is trying to convince himself that he's done this to save her, but he's conflicted because he thinks like he did it because he ate the brain of the dude that she was with, and now he's trying to collect her because it made him feel happy, and so he's trying to collect her like the other things he's collected.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Okay.
But he's like, I did save her, right? Like, so he's trying to convince himself.
Right.
So
He's trying to justify it to himself.
Yeah, so now they're in the plane, and we get a couple of those scenes. He leaves to go find Julie some food, and he comes across his friend M. We see that M appears to be different. He's slowly losing his will to go on, and he's starting to transform into a bony. When he smells Julie on R, he begins to get suspicious, and as he's transforming, he's focusing only on the hunger for flesh and brains. So while R is trying to get Julie to escape, the two run into some corpses, and one of them Julie seems to know. She's like, "Oh, that's Peter. Like, I used to know him, and he's eating something." So Julie is like, "That's gross," and her emotional reaction, like noise, causes some corpses to show up, and then M shows up. And M is turning into a bony, and so it's too hard to hide Julie while they're trying to escape. So R takes her back to the plane, and that now M, who is a bony, is like suspicious, so he keeps like circling the plane, stopping for them from leaving. So for this reason, R is basically stuck in the plane, and he's using Perry's brain to keep himself from becoming hungry, but he keeps remembering these things that have happened. So he has like memories of Perry and Julie, just like he does in the Actually. So finally, we see M. A couple days have passed. They've spent some time together. M leaves, and R is like, "Okay, it's safe to leave. We can go now." So this time, they shamble off and they run into a couple of corpses, but the corpse of Peter approaches them again, and it turns out that Peter is not a corpse. He's a human who's been hiding out. And when he saw Julie, he was like, "Oh, yo, I can do something about this." So at first, Julie is like, "Oh my God, Peter's alive, and you found a way to live here. You know, how did you do that?" And he's like, "Well, I didn't want to live in the oppressive city because your father is a bit of a tyrant." And she's like, "Yeah, I know, it sucks." And he's like, "Well, come with me and I can show you the way that I live." And Julie agrees, but then she finds out that Peter is actually, like, his life is by hunting down living humans and eating their flesh like a zombie anyway. And he's actually going to go on.
Did Peter get his brains eaten by...
No, Perry.
Perry. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. No, Peter is a character I based off of the name Petruchio, which is from the play.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
From Romeo and Juliette. But
this is different. Okay.
Yeah. So it turns out that Peter is actually not a corpse. But he's basically trying to lure Julie away so that he can kill her and eat her. That's how he's surviving as a cannibal. And Julie is like, "Holy shit, that's fucked up." And so R shows up, and he's like, he like intervenes, and Peter's sort of confused because he's like, "What the heck?" Like, and then R crushes his skull with a fire extinguisher. So now, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they find out, they leave further through with a car or whatever, it doesn't matter. They find a house to stay in, and R eats more of Perry's brains because he gets hungry, right? And this stops him from eating Julie. So then all of a sudden while he's eating the brains, he has a memory where Perry is given orders. This is Perry's memory. He's given orders by Julie's father, where John Malkovich's character says if they find anything that might be a cure or might lead to a cure, Perry is to destroy it, but not tell anyone else about it.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And this information, and he has to like kill off anyone who has any information about the cure to keep it a secret. He then sees the scene where they're back in the pharmaceutical facility, the lab, but it's from Perry's perspective. And he sees Nora and the other nurse talk to each other. She's like, "I think I found something that might help us." And Perry waits for Nora and the nurse's back to be turned. And then he takes out a knife and like stabs the one nurse and carves her open.
Okay.
And then the zombies show up. And so he's able to blame it on the zombies.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So R tries to tell Julie about this, but of course he doesn't have the power of speech. Everything we've been hearing from him is through inner monologue. He doesn't become more human. So she's like, "I don't understand. Why are you so..." And so he finds something to write with and actually starts writing on the walls. Like begins actually writing down what he has seen through the memories on the walls. And through writing, he's able to get all of this information across, more complex information. How his writing's not neat and it's slow, but she's like, "Holy shit, like you can actually write. Like you're not just like a different zombie. Like you're a human stuck in there." And I can see this because you're writing like full sentences and shit. And so she reads all this and she's like, wait, what the heck? I don't believe you. Like, Perry wouldn't do that. Why would and then he's like, no, the zombies showed up after. Like, we didn't show up. Like, I was part of that zombie group. We didn't show up until after. Right? And she's like, well, how can you be sure? How do you know anything about this from Perry's perspective? And he's like, well, when we eat brains, we get those memories. And I've been eating Perry's brain. And she's like, that's fucking gross. And so she leaves him. She's basically upset with him for eating her boyfriend. And so he's like, I need to eat. Like, I to function. But she's like, that's fucking gross, and leaves. So Julie goes back to the safe place and confronts her father. She's like, you knew that there was a cure out there, and there might still be one out there. And he locks her in her room before she can tell anyone else about it. And it turns out that he says, I knew there was a cure, that there might be a cure, but I didn't want it ever found because I knew I would lose my power and my command. And I wanted to be in power.
That son of a bitch.
Yeah, but what he doesn't know is that his lust for power is not only hurting the people that he commands, but also the people who are trapped by the virus, which Julie knows now. They're like trapped inside their own bodies. So R sneaks into the safe place, and saves Julie before her father tries to kill her. And then they search for Nora, and they find her. She's basically being held prison, waiting for trial because she's been lying about the cure as well. She says she thinks she knows what they need to build the cure. She just needs to go find the ingredients. So they quietly sneak out of the place and leave it. And they're traveling together, and it's a couple of days, but R has been neglecting to eat because he sees how Julie thought of him. So he's purposefully trying not to eat.
Okay.
And he's slowly getting hungrier. So then they find a cure in a facility, but not before R's hunger starts to take him over. And so while Nora is in the other room working on a cure, R begs Julie to shoot him. He's like, shoot me. And she's like, no, just wait a little longer and you'll be cured. And he's like, no, you have to shoot me. Like you need to kill me, otherwise I'm going to do something. And she's like, no, if you wait a little bit longer, then you'll be fine. So then we switch to Nora, and she finishes the cure and runs into the room only to see that R is feeding on Julie's brains.
Oh.
And so eating her brain, he has a memory of a younger version of herself. So it's her memory. She's sitting and laughing. She appears to be at some kind of high school. And slowly we get a look at each of the friends that are around her, and we see there's Nora at one side and Perry on the other side, followed by Peter, the corpse that we saw earlier that R smashed the skull in because they were friends. And the last person that is in the group is R himself. And we can see that the way that he looks at Julie, he was in love with her even back then. And that was the reason why he went after her even before he ate Perry's brain, by the way. I made sure to say it that way.
Right.
So now he sort of returns to reality after seeing this, that he was like his human version of himself was in love with Nora, in love with Julie, sorry. And so we return to reality, and Nora is standing over him with the cure, but he backs away. He doesn't want to live with the knowledge of what he just did. And so Nora is like, well, I got to test it on someone. And so she turns to go find to find another corpse and test the cure out, and it works. But when she turns back, she sees that and she injects this guy, and this guy slowly turns back human, and he's like, my name is Lawrence. And then she's like, oh my God, it works. And she turns back to go find R, but R has given up on life and is slowly turning into a bony. Yeah. And so she's like, so before he can do that, but before he can totally turn, she tries to inject him with the cure, but because he's already a bony, he just turns to dust. And that's the end.
Wow.
Yeah. I wanted to go for like, I was like, as soon as I found out it was
full
Romeo and Juliette. Yeah, I was like, you have to go Romeo and Juliette then. Like, there's no other way. So it is a happy ending because Nora does get a cure and she leaves. With this Lawrence guy, who, by the way, is Friar Lawrence from the show. From the movie. So she leaves with this Lawrence guy, and she has a cure, and we know the cure works, but Julie and R are both dead. And I also just thought, like, how tragic would it be if in his own, like Shakespearean almost, in his own want to be more human for Julie, he winds up, not eating brains, which eventually leads to him eating her. I was just like,
Yeah,
that's so tragic. And then finding
that's
out at the
great.
end that he was in love with her all this time.
Right.
Yeah.
The only question I have about that, because you did break up for a little bit there, and I'm not sure if I
no
missed
worries.
something, but so it's implied that he knew her before,
Yeah.
but then wouldn't she also have known him? So wouldn't she have known his name?
At the very beginning, she sees, or when they first meet, R somehow convinces her to go with him. And the reason she goes is because she knows who he is, or thinks she knows who he is. So when she asks for his name, he's like, all he can remember is R, right? And so she's like, oh, okay. Like, and the reason they get to know each other so quickly is because she sees this person he used to be is still trapped in there somewhere.
Right.
But it isn't until she sees him writing that she's finally like, oh, holy shit, like you're actually like in there for the most part. But then she also finds out that he ate her boyfriend's brains, and so she's like, that's fucking gross. You're still a zombie.
Right,
so,
right.
It just has to all be from his perspective. But I do think that there would be a way to do it so that she knew the whole time but never said anything because she wasn't sure it was him.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I think that could work. Yeah, that's nice. I like how you've actually just gone full Romeo and Juliet with that.
Well, Romeo and Juliet is my favorite Shakespeare of all time.
I mean, it's a good one. Yeah, it's a good one.
And I've read quite a few Shakespeare plays, but it is my favorite of all
probably
time.
Macbeth.
But yeah, I was like, once I found out it was Romeo and Juliet and we got this awesome happy ending, I was like, great. And I actually still wouldn't pick my pitch necessarily over the film that we got. I like it as a YA. Like, it's a great young adult movie. I would recommend it and watch it again. But I did think if you're going to do Romeo and Juliet, I do think you need to have Romeo and Juliet. In my mind, is a happy ending, even though the two main characters die.
Yeah,
because the war between the two houses, the war between the two houses, the Capulets and the Montagues, is over. But in order to get there, it took the death of their two heirs, right? And so in this, we get something very similar. The zombie virus or whatever is over. There's a cure now, but our two characters have paid the price.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Well done, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Job well done.
This is one of my
Excellent.
better ones. But I do think the reason that it's one of my better ones is because there was already a lot to work with. Like, Romeo and Juliet is pretty deep as a story, and then adding the zombies to that story makes the Romeo and Juliet allegory more interesting. Like, there's already a lot to work with, and now there's zombies as well. That's an incredible amount of material, I think, to work with.
You were breaking up quite a lot in there. I didn't catch all of it.
But, that's okay. Basically, to sum it up, I basically said, like, Romeo and Juliet is already pretty deep, and so now you're just adding zombies into that, and so there's a lot to work with. Any last minute thoughts on where are we?
No,
any last minute thoughts on Warm Bodies?
That's it for me. Yeah. No. Yeah. I feel I've said everything that I've had to say.
Yeah. I'm still super happy that I blew your mind with finding out that it's Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah. I'm sort of like, why didn't I catch that? I mean, I guess it's been a while since I've read that play, so I'm not as familiar with it. But yeah, blew my mind. That was excellently pointed out. Yeah.
Yeah. Where can people find you?
Sometimes you can find me on the beach. Sometimes you can just find me digging for trash in a back alleyway. But if you want to look for me on the internet, my website is www.nathanieldraper.com.
People are going to think you're a raccoon.
Letterboxd at DraperNate.
People are going to think that you were a raccoon.
I had a full moon, actually. Yeah.
Oh, you're a were-coon.
A were-coon, yeah.
Yeah. You can find my band Robot Philosopher anywhere you listen to music. Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. You can also find us on Facebook, and I think we have an Instagram. I don't know. I don't run that.
That's pretty cool.
And you can always check out awesome videos, podcasts every week from CineMasters, sometimes with special guests on all your favorite. We're doing TV shows now, too, every so often. And you can also check out the video essays we do every 2 weeks called This Is a Thing. You can check out our latest podcast, our latest This Is a Thing on High School Musical and whether or not it's good or bad art and how we decide those kinds of things through a lens of morality and our aesthetics and Marxism. And
Nice.
so check that out.
Yeah,
And we'll see you next week. Yeah.
Oh, I got a joke before we end.
Oh, here we go.
Why was John Malkovich trying to keep the cure a secret?
I don't know.
Because tickets are really expensive.
Oh, boo. Boo. I'll see you next week.
See ya.